Hello everybody and welcome to another C++ tutorial for beginners. Now in this video, I'm going to be covering comparison operators. I'm going to be showing you how we can compare different values, not just numeric values, strings, characters, and Boolean values as well. So with that said, let's dive into the video. So in the previous video, I showed you a ton of different arithmetic operators. The arithmetic operators had numeric operands and they returned a numeric value. When I say numeric, I'm talking about the int and float data type or data types. So in this video, I'm going to show you something called comparison operators. Now I'm actually going to start by just listing out all of the comparison operators. We have less than, greater than, less than or equal to, greater than or equal to, is not equal to, and is equal to. The order I'm listing these means nothing. There's no importance in this order, so don't read into that. But what comparison operators do is they compare the values of different variables, right? Or just they compare values in general. So whenever we write an expression, and I will discuss what an expression is when I show it, but it's just anything that involves these operators essentially, they're going to return to us a true or false value. More specifically, they're going to return a Boolean value. So remember, we saw this data type called bool. Now, bool is always equal to either true or false. It's one of these two values no matter what. So when we use these operators right here, the expression that contains them returns to us true or false, or it evaluates to true or false. The reason for that is it's telling us whether or not our comparison was true or whether it was false. So to give you a really simple example, let me make a variable called test. It's going to be the bool data type, which is short form for Boolean. And what I'm going to say is 1 is less than 2. Now, using some critical thinking skills here, what do you think this is going to give us, right? Is 1 less than 2? Well, 1 is clearly less than 2, and so this should evaluate to true, because this comparison was indeed correct. It was true. Now, if we flip around this sign and we ask if 1 is greater than 2, then obviously this is going to evaluate to false, because 1 is not greater than 2. So that is what you use comparison operators for. I will go through all of them, but they're fairly intuitive and straightforward, and they don't only need to be used on, numeric values. We can use them on characters, we can use them on strings, we can use them on Booleans, we can use them on other data types as well. Now, you want to be a little bit careful when you're using these operators on strings or characters because they don't necessarily work the way in which you think they will. In fact, whenever you're using these type of operators, so like greater than or equal to, greater than or equal to with strings or with characters, they evaluate or compare the strings using something called the lexicographical or lexicographical ordering. I'll put the word up on the screen because I'm probably mispronouncing it, but this is a specific way of comparing strings or comparing characters together. I will show it to you in a second, but I just want to be really clear that when you use this with characters or you use this with strings, the result may not necessarily be intuitive. You may not actually be able to guess what it's going to be unless you understand how the comparison is performed. Anyways, enough of that. Let's just continue with this kind of more simple example. I'm just going to see out test right here. I just want to show you what I get. So if I go ahead and compile my program here, oops, I didn't mean to run the program. I want to compile and now run. Notice that we get 0. Now, the reason we're getting 0 here is because whenever we see out a Boolean value, it's going to give us the numeric representation of that Boolean. So if you remember back to one of the first videos, true is always equal to 1 and false is always equal to 0. So it's because I don't have the semicolon. Yeah, that's why it wasn't highlighting. Anyways, you get the idea. So true is equal to 1, false is equal to 0. So if you see us printing out 0, that means that this test variable was actually equal to false. If you see us printing out 1, that means this test variable was equal to true. And just to prove this to you even more, if I try to just see out the actual value of true right here, you're going to see that even this is going to give us a 1. So let's do this, and you see that we get a 1. So now let me just go through a few more of the comparison operators. I'll then show you the comparisons on strings and characters, and then we'll get into like a kind of a cool example where we get some user input, and then we'll print out some comparisons between different user inputs. Anyways, we have this Boolean test variable. We obviously have just looked at the less than and greater than comparison. Now, something to note here is if I say 1 is greater than 1, this is false, right? Because 1 is not greater than 1. If I wanted this to be true, so I wanted greater than or equal to, then what I would do is I would tack on the equal sign at the end here. And now what this says is 1 greater than or equal to 1. So if these two values are the same, this returns true. Or if the value on the left-hand side is greater than the value on the right-hand side, this returns true. Now, same holds in reverse here. If I switch this to less than, now I'm checking if 1 is less than or equal to 1. However, if I just put a less than, this is false because 1 is not strictly less than 1. So a lot of times people will read this and they'll say strictly less than to really emphasize the point that you are making sure they are not the same values. It actually must be less than this other value. So I think, I mean, I'm not going to compile the program and go through these. I think you guys get the idea, but that is the basics of these 4 operators right here. So now let's look at the is not equal to and is equal to. Now, make sure you do not confuse these operators with the single equal sign. So this single equal sign right here, and we've seen this, if I do something, well, we're seeing it right here, is what's known as the assignment operator. So we are assigning some value to some variable or to some container, whatever it's going to be. But we're assigning something to something else. Whereas when we have 2 equal signs, we are checking for equivalence or we're comparing 2 values together. So I like to read this as is equal to, not just equal to, because when I say that, sometimes people get confused and they think I'm talking about 1 equal sign. Anyways, let's use the single equal sign, or the double equal sign, sorry. So if I say 1 equals 1, what this is checking is if the left-hand side is equivalent or is equal to the right-hand side. So now let me just see out test. Let's see what we get if we compare 1 and 1. So if I do this and I run the program, we get true, obviously, because 1 is equal to 1. Now, the exclamation point equal sign is not equal to. You can read this as is not equal to. So pretty much you can just check for comparison, and then whatever that is, you can flip it. So if the 2 things are the same, when you have the not equal sign, this means you are going to get false, because if the 2 things are the same and you're checking if they're not the same, then obviously this is false. Whereas if these 2 things are different, this expression is going to give you true because you're checking if they are not equal to each other, and obviously 1 is not equal to 2. So I think that's probably straightforward enough. I'm not going to go into a huge detailed explanation, but if I have 1 does not equal 2, and now I run this and I compile, we get true because they're not the same. However, if I make them the same, then you're going to see here when I run this that we get false because, well, they are the same, and we were checking if they were not the same. So that is kind of the basics of how you use comparison operators. Now, what I'm going to do is show you how we use these with characters and with strings. So I'm going to start with characters because they're a little bit simpler, and then I will show you strings. So first thing to note here, and remember that a character is one single character surrounded by single quotation marks. If you want to have more than one character, you need to use a string, which is double quotation marks. But let's compare the character A to the character uppercase A. So just take a guess here, and I'll actually make these at the 2 equal signs, so we'll check if these are equal to each other. Do you think that this A is equal to this A? Just take a guess. I'm going to compile the program here, and let's see what we get. Oops, compile and run. Notice we get 0. So the reason I wanted to show you this example is because uppercase letters are different than lowercase letters. Now, it seems obvious, but a lot of times people mix this up. A lowercase a is not the same as an uppercase a. So when we're checking for a comparison between characters or strings, we need to make sure we're accounting for the fact that one of them may be a capital, another one may be lowercase, right? So just keep that in mind. But if I have lowercase a is equal to lowercase a, obviously this will give us true because they are the same character. So that is how you compare characters, at least when you're checking for equivalence. So we will continue in 1 second, but I need to quickly thank the sponsor of this video and this series, which is Algo Expert. Algo Expert is the best platform to use when preparing for your software engineering coding interviews. They have detailed solutions to all of their over 140 practice interview questions in over 9 programming languages, and you can check them out from the link in the description and use the code TechWithTim for a discount on the platform. Now, what happens if I do something like lowercase a is less than and then lowercase b? Well, again, take a guess. What do you think we're going to get? Do you think this is even going to work? Like, do you think I can make this comparison? Is it going to crash my program? Oops, didn't mean to close that. All my tabs just closed all of a sudden. Okay, let's bring that back up, but let's compile, let's run, and notice we get a 1. So this is actually true. This is a totally valid comparison. We can check if one character is less than another character. And what this actually does is this compares what's known as the lexicographical Yeah, I think it's lexicographical. I'll put up something on the screen because I'm 100% mispronouncing this word, but I believe it's called lexicographical ordering of characters. So really, this is fancy for saying we're going to look at what's called the ASCII value of these two characters and compare them together. So there's this thing called ASCII, A-S-C-I-I, I believe. Again, I'll put that up on the screen so you guys can see it. I'm not giving you wrong information. But this is a table, and every single character on your keyboard, every single character you could possibly type, has a numeric representation in this ASCII table. So for example, the lowercase letter A, I believe, has the representation 97. The lowercase letter B has the representation 98. And this makes sense, right? Right after A, we have B, and so that's 98. C is 99, D is 100, so on and so forth. So when we do this comparison, you can kind of imagine that we are converting both of these characters to whatever their ASCII value is, whatever number represents them on this table, and then we're just comparing those two numbers together. So in this case, we're going to have 97 less than 98. That gives us true, and so we are all good. But now I want to show you something interesting. What happens if I compare lowercase a to uppercase b? Is this going to change anything? Obviously, we know that uppercase and lowercase letters are different, and while b is going to have a different representation on the ASCII table than lowercase b. So just take a guess. You're probably not going to know the answer to this, but I will show you now. And you can see that we actually get 0. The reason we get 0 is because even though A comes before B in the alphabet, this ASCII value is greater than the ASCII value of capital B. In fact, capital B has an ASCII value, I believe, of 66 because I know, or I'm pretty sure, that uppercase A has an ASCII value of 65. So this is something that you're not going to memorize. You just kind of have to understand that when you do comparisons of characters or strings, it's not necessarily intuitive, and that you have to know what the ASCII values are to actually understand what you're going to get as your result. Anyways, though, if I change this to uppercase A, this expression now will be true because uppercase A is indeed less than uppercase B when we compare their ASCII values. So let's go ahead and run this, run the program, and now we get true. Awesome. So that is comparing characters. Now I'm going to show you how we can compare strings. So of course, when we compared these characters as well, we could have used the less than or equal to. We could have used the greater than or the greater than or equal to. We can use any of the comparison operators. Just be aware that when you're doing this with characters and strings, again, it's not necessarily intuitive. Now I will show you with strings though. So let's compare two strings together. Let's actually compare the string hello to the string hello. Now take a guess. What do you think we're going to get here? Let me go ahead and compile the program and let's run this, and we get 0. The reason we get 0 is because this uppercase E here is different than this lowercase e, and so these strings are different, right? And so we're getting false. Whereas if I change this now to actually match this string, we should see that we get true. So let's do that, and we get true. Now, there is other ways to compare strings. I'm actually going to do an entire video just talking about strings because they're really important. But for now, you can use the double equal sign like this. And then, of course, you can use the not equal to as well. And this will tell you if these two strings are not equal to each other. So we compile, we run, we get 0 because obviously these are equivalent to each other. Now, let's try this, though. What if I have hello and then I have hello with a space at the end? Are these two strings the same? What do you think? Well, let's try it out. And we can see that we actually get sorry, this is because we're checking if they're not equal to each other. So this is telling us these two strings are not the same. The reason they are not the same is because a space, well, that's a character. That has some value on the ASCII table as well. And since this string has a space and this one doesn't, they are not the same. So just make sure you're aware of that. Again, not necessarily intuitive. Some people may say hello and hello with the space at the end are the same. But to our computer, no, they are different because this string has a character that this one does not. So that is kind of the basics of comparisons. Now what I'm going to do is show you how we can actually get input from the user, and then compare it against something. And we'll just do like, a more realistic example, essentially. So what I'm going to say here is int n, or actually I'll say int num1 and int num2. And then I'm going to ask the user to type in two numbers. So I'm going to say cout, and I'm going to cout type a number like that. And then what I will do after this is I will cin, and I will cin whatever they type into num1. Now for this example, we're just going to assume that the user actually gives us valid input. We already know how to handle invalid input from the previous video, so I'm just not going to cover that right here. So now after I have my cin, what I'm going to do is have another cout. So I'm going to have another cout that says type a number, and then I'm going to say cin, and I'm going to cin num2. Then what I'm going to do after this is I'm going to print out whether or not these numbers are the same. So I'm going to say the following. I'm going to say cout, and I'm going to say these two numbers, oops, if I can type here, numbers are the same, colon, and then I'm going to cout, and I'm going to say num1 is equal to num2. So this is kind of going to tell us if we get a 1, these two numbers are the same. If we get a 0, they are not the same. And then I think that's pretty much all I need actually for this program. So hopefully that's clear. We're collecting two numbers from the user. We are then printing out these two numbers are the same, and we're just checking whether or not they are the same. So let's compile this. I'll compile the program, and we seem to have gotten an error. What exactly is the error here? Let me just look here. All right, so I just had a look at this. Actually, the error I was getting here is that I need to parenthesize this expression. The reason I need to do this is because when I had num1 is equal to num2, the compiler was getting confused, and it was reading this entire cout and kind of trying to end it here, and then it saw the two equal signs, and then it wasn't sure essentially what it should do. And this kind of makes sense because these two equal signs could be replaced with this, right? So how is the compiler supposed to know that we're actually trying to compare these two values and then cout this comparison? So whenever you have those kind of errors, just try to parenthesize your expression. So when you put these in parentheses now, this is telling the compiler, hey, I want to evaluate this first. So now I know that I'm going to be couting a true or a false value, whereas before it was having a hard time determining that we were trying to do the evaluation of this comparison before all the cout stuff. So hopefully that's kind of clear, but if you run into that error, just, try something like this. Using parentheses is always a decent idea. If anything, it just makes your code more clear. So anyways, let me recompile this here. Now we can see this is all good. Let me rerun the program. Ask me to type a number. Let's type a number 3. Let's type 3 again. These two numbers are the same. Gives me a 1 saying, yes, these are the same. Awesome. So let's run this one more time. Let's go 3, 4, and then it tells me these two numbers are the same. Nope, they are not the same. They are different because we are getting 0. So that's really all I wanted to show you. I just wanted to implement this into like a really basic example so you could see how this might work. Now try messing around with this with floats, with Booleans, with characters, all of that. And yeah, just see how these different comparison operators work. It's always a good idea to kind of do stuff after the video because I can only show you so much. And this is meant to give you an introduction to really learn these concepts. You have to practice and play around with them on your own. So with that said, I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, make sure to leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and I will see you in another YouTube video.